I started out trial and error. So the first trial was the easy stuff, which I think everybody may start with, which is sending Facebook messages and sending emails to people that you get from the internet. And you realize, everything's put it out there and see how it reacts. And if you don't get something, you got to change it.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why? Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Tommy Harr. Tommy's a 29-year-old home inspector turned real estate investor. He's renovated 150 houses to flip or keep as rentals. He's wholesaled 150 plus deals. I'm guessing a lot of these numbers might have gone up even since this bio arrived, Tommy. So I just want to start with saying thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today. Appreciate you taking the time and coming to share your story.
Absolutely. No, thank you for the platform and thank you for building a new relationship. It's always nice to meet new people and get to share stories from both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start with that. Let's start with your story. Tell us your background, kind of walk us through your journey into real estate, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said earlier, I'm 29 years old, one of five kids. So I grew up in a very big household, and it's always been very family oriented. So, went to college, 2013 to 2017, played college soccer, did the whole college athlete thing. I went to University of Dayton, got a finance degree, and then as everybody on my team or my friends in college were going and getting let's call it regular jobs, I went back home and started working for my old man as a home inspector. So he owns a home inspection business and a franchise. So I always told him as I was young that I wanted to help him out. I'm the oldest boy of the five kids, and it always kind of felt right to go back home and help my dad. He had that business, but growing up, he also had a property preservation business, which, if anybody knows what that means, it's when the banks were foreclosing 07, 08, 09, 2010. Somebody had to be the boots on the ground for the bank, meaning cleaning out the houses, boarding them up, changing the locks, making sure that they're not just going to all the way to decrepit. They kept up to where they could sell them in the future. So I grew up in that business. So I grew up mowing a lot of lawns, quite a bit of lawns, trashing out a lot of houses, and kind of seeing that stuff firsthand. I didn't really know what it was all about until a bunch of years later, and I was about 23, 24, started inspecting. And then as time went on, started to learn about investing in real estate and kind of went all in from there. And now I have my own investing company, and we wholesale, we flip, we manage and own rental properties. We have Airbnbs, and we have a education company as well now.
Cool. The, a lot of my guests come from something else, right? Like did something else before real estate and kind of fell into it, oftentimes accidentally, myself included. But the folks that have a background, right? Like someone in the family, they've been exposed to it at an early age. Um, I think one of the big upsides to that is you get to get started earlier, right? You kind of know what's going on, what the story is. You get, at a young age you were exposed, and then kind of
Yeah,
followed in your dad's footsteps, and then built from there. And I think it's an advantage in a lot of ways, in the sense that, one, you have that education, that knowledge of what's involved with, whether it's with real estate in some capacity, right? Home inspections.
yeah.
I actually was not familiar with. Tell me again what you called it. Where you're taking care of the bank foreclosed homes,
Property preservation.
property preservation. Yeah. So yeah, I'd actually never heard of that. It's a funny thing. I mean, I knew about foreclosures and things like that happening, but I hadn't really taken that next step to think there was someone that had to take care of them, which makes total sense. But
Absolutely.
again, exposes you to those scenarios at a young age, and allows you to kind of see, you know, what real estate can do for people. And then one thing that I always kind of harp on, and I'm really passionate about with when I talk to younger people that are thinking about getting into real estate, is like like the time, right? The real estate investment in any capacity, time is your biggest weapon. And so
Yep.
it's very exciting to talk to someone who, you know, whether by purpose or just fortuitously got into real estate at a young age. Like, that's fantastic. So you started with the home inspection with your dad. Like, tell me how things grew from there. Obviously, you've done a ton. So kind of how did it
Yeah.
grow? How did you build that business?
Yeah, so my dad's home inspection business, I almost don't, it's a business, but it's a one man show. So he went from the property preservation. He always had the home inspections. So the property preservation went not under, but they closed the doors. Banks, less foreclosures, less money in the business. He just closed the doors. He had like 60 employees at one point, and then there was just him, one man show. So I joined the business, and he'd always had enough business for one person. So I was just kind of there, and I was like, okay, how do I drive business? And he'd never marketed, he'd never done any stuff like that. So it was pretty much just on me to kind of figure it out. So learning how to market, learning how to sell, learning how to get in front of people. Like, sales isn't really just sending a Facebook message, which I thought it was going to be that easy, to realtors and get business. So I grew that business over the next probably 4 or 5 years, 5x probably in revenue. But as we were beginning, or I was beginning, we started to do draw inspections, which, if you guys know investing, if you get a hard money loan or any type of loan from a bank that has a rehab budget within it, they escrow that, and an inspector or somebody boots on the ground has to come and take pictures to release it to the bank to make sure that the work is done right. So I was that person. Me and my dad were that person for pretty much every single hard money company in Columbus at the time. So I was seeing all these renovations. I was seeing the areas that we used to trash out and mow the lawns changing, people driving really nice cars and never being at the houses. So I had always been taught growing up, and not really taught, just seen it, that hey, you got to work every day for money. You got to get up, you got to work, you got to go punch the clock. So that was part of the things that were ingrained in me. But as I started to see, like you said earlier, immersion, so I was immersed in seeing the other side now. I wanted to know more. So I went back to a conversation I had with my uncle. It's kind of weird how things played out. My uncle called me about a day or two before I graduated college and asked me if I wanted to invest in real estate with him in Chicago. I told him no, I knew nothing about it. And after about 6 months of inspecting and doing those hard money draws, I called him back and I said, hey, would you want to do this in Columbus? He said yes. Long story short, we bought a house in Columbus. We flipped it. Over the next 18 months, we lost about $100,000 on that house. So a great first start,
Yeah.
and getting kicked in the teeth sometimes in the beginning is the best way to do it. And I just studied so much at that point, bigger pockets, podcasts, books, that there was no quitting. So I just kind of went all in from there, wholesaling, house hacking, and just building it up from nothing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's, I mean, not to harp on your age, but it's another thing that I think is an advantage of getting started young is you don't have a lot to lose, in the sense
Exactly.
of, I mean, maybe some younger people do have families, but like, if you don't have a wife and kids, or you don't have this kind of long-standing career that you're worried about, that, and some of those worries are probably just limiting beliefs for people, but at the end of the day, being young and hungry and having the time and energy to, like, go all in, like you said, you had a bad experience with that flip, but okay, like like, I
Yeah.
think that's an important thing for people to understand in real estate, is like, not every deal is going to work. It's just not, like, not every
No.
deal is going to be a home run. And so you can't do one bad deal and stop. You can, but then you've only had the
Yeah.
negative, right? So you have to really kind of commit to it and keep going. So when you mentioned that your dad didn't have, kind of a marketing system, wasn't trying to really grow the business,
Yep.
and just had it as that sort of solopreneur type of structure. What did you do, and how did you learn about it? Because I think that's, you made a really great point that, like, marketing isn't just sending out a Facebook message, and it would be nice if it was that easy, but it's definitely not. And
Yeah.
so, like, what did you do? How did you learn techniques, like, to drive that side of the business and essentially fuel the growth?
Yeah, I mean, I started out trial and error. So the first trial was the easy stuff, which I think everybody may start with, which is sending Facebook messages and sending emails to people that you get from the internet. And you realize, I mean, everything's kind of put it out there and see how it reacts. And if you don't get something, you got to change it. So I was getting nothing in return, or like kind of, who are you? I'm not giving you my business. To then buying the scammers online that make you pay for the first page of Google. So I thought Google was going to be the next thing. I need to be on the first page. Those people took my money. So my dad allowed me to kind of make these mistakes, luckily, to then know that it's not easy. So the next thing was, okay, let's start cold calling these people. Let's start actually going into the offices. So this was 2017, 2018, like realtors were still heavily in brick and mortar. So this was before COVID. The people were going into the offices heavily. So going in there, showing face. I got CE certified, so continuing education certified. So I would give those classes out for free to try and get 30, 40, 50 agents in one room, give them lunch, give them a free continuing education for 2 hours, and then that's marketing for us. So getting in front of them, and then once we get them their business, just over value. So me and my dad would go to every inspection together. We had great technology. We would give things right away, reports next day, and have great communication. And that just helped really explode stuff. And also going to networking events, sponsoring networking events, going to networking events a couple times a week.
Yeah, it's. I'm sure some people are gonna might think that's a lot of work. But yes, that's exactly it.
It is.
It is a lot of work. Like marketing is such a huge part of business, and not in the sense that I think, and I say this really from personal experience. Like think of marketing as a logo and like being on social media or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But really, it is you have to get in front of people, and I think what
Yep.
you just talked about, some of that has shifted since COVID, and maybe I'll ask you that question: is how has that shifted for you? But I think still people they like to meet you. It's just
Yeah.
that they want to meet you in person. I feel the same in a lot of ways. Like now you can in person might meet on a Zoom,
Sure.
but one on one versus again like I created a video and I put it on YouTube. Like that's great to build credibility, but at the end of the day, you also have to start having conversations. So I will ask you, like, kind of, you were doing all this, things were growing great, and then we have COVID, and now being in person is harder to get to get people in that scenario. So how did you pivot? What kind of how was that experience for you?
Yeah. So um, before COVID, it was, I mean, you just go out there and you pound pavement and you get in front of people. I always say that real estate is one of the last businesses that is done over a beer or is done networking, and people want to do business with who they like. So once that went away, you got to kind of change things. So you either start your little groups during COVID that people were okay with being together and having coffee in small settings, and you just got to be the person to go out there and do it. And then during that time, I started creating content. I didn't really make content on inspecting. It was more investing. So around that time, I was starting to really understand what I was doing, understanding my direction as an investor, wholesaling rental properties and flipping. So I started giving a nice twist of like home inspection knowledge to the home flipping side, because I realized a lot of people didn't share a lot of the house stuff, which is obviously very important. And it's carved out a pretty good niche. So being able to kind of switch there has been important. And I don't really market much anymore for the home inspection stuff. My little brother does now.
And so you've shifted kind of away from the home inspection, and you're focused on sort of you've got a pretty big portfolio. Your bio says kind of managed in house. So how are you?
Hmm.
That's a lot to do, I guess, is what what
Yeah.
I'm getting at. Sort of continuing to have growth, manage all of that. How have you
Yep.
structured your business over time? Because I think that's a lot of people struggle with growth and figuring out how
Yeah.
to kind of balance all of that. What are some things you could tell listeners about that? For you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, It's not the sexy answer. It's slow and steady. So, I mean, I didn't accumulate 65 rentals overnight. I started with a house hack. I lived in one unit. I rented my bedrooms out and I rented the other out. It was a duplex with an FHA loan. What that allowed me to do is figure out what system I wanted other people to pay on. So at the time, it was Cozy. So I got a system to where people can pay and put work orders in and I could manage it. And then as I started to buy a couple more rentals, then you got to figure out how to list them. So, okay, you figure out a system and you start like figuring out that there's repeatable processes for everything. So, okay, I got to list it. Where do you put them? How do the responses come? The responses are all kind of the same. So it's like, okay, let me put these in a document and know in the future I have to hire this out. So then next is who is that hire for that process? And most people are like, well, I only own a couple units or I own one unit. I don't have enough money to do that. So do it yourself for a while. And if you want to actually scale, do it properly and hire a virtual assistant. So my first hire was a virtual assistant. He's over in the Philippines. He would list all my properties. He still works for me now. He's been probably almost 3 years. Um, he lists the properties. He manages work orders. He collects rent. He does everything. That's online based. And he'll screen tenants, all that stuff. And then as time grew, I replaced myself with a full-time property management team member. So now we have a team member that sits in there. He manages the system and the VA, and then we hired a maintenance guy. So it's kind of the problems that start to grow as you grow. Those are the things. So you're going to need people, you're going to need maintenance, but I think you only need a maintenance person around, if you're going to self-manage, around 50 plus units to have a full-time maintenance guy. But it's the same thing through all my other businesses. You learn it. Most people want to scale right away because they hear that online. They think it's cool. Hey, go and scale. Well, if you scale too fast, you're going to scale chaos. So it's not going to be organized. You have to create the system and you got to build a process and then grow it, but grow it organized.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point, and I guess but speaking as someone who has a podcast, sometimes even the titles, excuse me, sorry, the titles that you see on podcast episodes, right? It's like 0 to 300 units in 6 months, and it's like, oh, I want to listen to that because I want to do that. Like
Yeah.
people want it to be fast and easy, and it's really not, and it's kind of probably a disservice to people to make it look like it's that way, because that's kind of how, because then if you think you think it's going to be that way and then it doesn't go that way for you, you get sort of in that comparison state, and it makes it hard to kind of to believe in it. So excuse me, sorry. So you're growing all of this, you're sort of implementing, putting people into these positions as they're needed. How long, I guess, you're still growing, but like you said, about 50 units for a maintenance person. When did you hire a property manager, to remove that from your plate?
It was probably around 40 or 50 units as well. So actually maybe a little bit before, probably like 30. Once we realized that, okay, like I'm living off my cash flow at that point, you got to make a decision if this is going to be like a passive thing for you, passive in quotes, because it's never passive,
Right.
or it's going to be a business. So you need to make that decision because you're going to kill all of your cash flow hiring these new people, and you have to scale your portfolio to the high ones or into the 100s to see that cash flow if you're going to bring people in house. So we made that decision because we knew we wanted to kind of grow and build bigger things in other businesses as well, vertically within our business. Um, so that was one of the, other than an acquisition person in our wholesaling company, that was our, I think, second hire. So we wanted to get that off our plate. We wanted to make sure that that was running smoothly, and we wanted to build a property management business over time to where we bring on other people's business, and really build that out.
Yeah, sure. And is everything local to you? Like
Yep.
your all your
Yep.
investments, you're kind of close.
Yep.
It, I think especially when you're talking about like residential real estate and scaling a portfolio to the size that you have, staying local probably allows you to do that scaling a little bit better than like a so sorry, a long
No, you're
distance
right.
investing. Like you're not having a you know, 7 houses in North Carolina, eight
Right.
houses in Ohio, 3 houses in Texas. Like then it's really hard to put those pieces in place because, as you said, like you're going to hire those people, it's going to kill cash flow. Well, you can't hire
Yeah.
someone to be your maintenance man in Ohio and North Carolina and Florida and Texas. Like it just that's going to be multiple people.
Hmm.
So it becomes that, I guess, issue of being able to scale, and I think that's maybe why, in a lot of ways, people might switch to multifamily in the long run because
Yep.
you're then you're purchasing, essentially in bulk, right? You're purchasing a
Yep.
hundred units at a time or whatever it is, and then you are going to have a third party property management, sort of professional that is baked into the business plan for those things. But
Sure.
when you're working on things locally and you have the access to deals and you have your team there and everything like that, like you can really scale a residential portfolio quite well if
Yep.
right there around you. So I think it in a lot of ways maybe it just depends on what market you're in. I think it would be
Yeah.
hard for me to do that. I think here in Los Angeles, just because it's not especially like a cash flow market. You can cash flow, I think, if you have ADUs and things like that. But just single family or even small multi would be hard to grow very much here. What do you see for the future for you in your businesses, Tommy? What's kind of the outlook?
Yeah, so you kind of almost said it as you were talking there about like you stay micro, and then as you build it, you get your systems ready to grow. So now we're super ready to as our wholesaling company grows, as our management company is systemized, as we have all these things that have come in and they're ready, we can take on 150 units if we want. So if
Right.
we have the deal flow, I'm pretty good at raising private capital. It's one of my main things I do in my business now. And we have the management and we have the construction. It's perfectly primed to just
Yeah.
buy a ton of real estate, whether it's for flipping and holding. So we're really getting ready to, at least I think in 2024, I want to buy I think 100 units or so, whether that's a mix of multifamily or small single family. But everybody kind of hits me with that question of, hey, Tom, you should go into commercial. Well, eventually, yeah, but there's also opportunity cost in every decision you make, you know?
Right.
So if I want to take my head off it and go to multi, I better have my team and processes and systems down so well to that doesn't hurt or get faulty at
Yeah.
all. So being able to make those decisions and at the right time, I mean, you can't time anything, but that's kind of where we're at. And then growing our team in our community as well.
Yeah, I love that point that you just made. And I wasn't even suggesting that, oh, you should go to multifamily, because I think you've
Sure.
got a great you've got a great thing going there. You've built a
Yeah.
business, and the point that you made about, if you're gonna pivot, it's gonna take some of your focus away from what you're doing currently that's working, and it's that's not to say it's right or wrong. It's just something that people need to understand. It's like, a
Yep.
lot of times, I mean, I do multifamily, but a lot of times you'll hear people in the multifamily space be like, "Oh, you gotta get away from that residential single family type stuff," and it's like, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I just think there's a lot of things that get said, like, "Oh, you need to get away from your W-2 job, or you need to get away from residential," and it's like, sure, like, if that's what you want, sure, do that, but I don't know that that's
Yeah.
necessarily, it doesn't have to be the same path for everybody. It does, every real estate journey doesn't have to end in like someone being a multifamily syndicator. So it's just kind of because of exactly what you said, right? Like, you already mentioned hiring people, team members, putting them in place is going to kill your cash flow. Well, if you're a full-time real estate investor, you're living off of that. Now you say, okay, I'm going to go do something else, right? So you've got to hire someone, or probably several someones, to do what you do, and then
Yep.
you move on to do something else that takes time to build, and that's okay. Like, that's growth in business, but it's just things for people to think about if you want to. If you do want to grow, that opportunity cost is there, and you're probably going to take a step back in terms of actual revenue and income for maybe a couple years even. Like it might take that long to get it going. So
Yeah.
things to and that's why I kind of asked that question, because it is like I think in a lot of cases and people, the expectation is like, oh, I did this. I did really good in residential. Now I have to go to multifamily. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
sure, you can, but there are ways to do that too. So,
Yeah, you don't have to do it too early.
right.
Like, sorry to cut you off.
No,
You don't
no.
have to do it too early. Everybody gets on the internet and they say, like, quit your W-2 job. You just did a deal. It's like, whoa, whoa,
Right.
whoa. You
Right.
gotta like leverage those
Yeah.
things. Understand that there's a season for all of those things. Yes, they're gonna come, but like, do it calculated, you know?
I absolutely agree. And just for people listening, like I say these things out of experience. Like I left my W-2 job
Yeah.
and then interest rates doubled, and that really has made a problem for me. Like it's just
Yeah.
like from a financial standpoint, it's just I had, was seeing excellent growth in real estate, and had it continued on that trajectory, no, would have been no problem that I left my W-2 job. But it's just things
Yep.
that you have to understand, like that you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You have to have some level of ability to weather storms, and that kind of time away from what's already working. And I think that is how people make big moves and how you have big growth. But at the same time, you don't have to rush it. Like take your time. So
Yeah.
I think great points to bring up. um Tommy, let me switch gears here. I want to ask you the questions I ask every guest. I think the first one is fairly obvious from the name of the show, being Know Your Why, but I do like to ask every guest, what is your why? What's driving you? I mean, you're still a young guy. You've been doing all of this since a young age, had a ton of success. What pushes you forward?
Yeah, so it's all family. So, like I said, one of five kids. We've always had a very, very tight-knit family. My mom was a school teacher for 30 years. My dad was a home inspector. So, saw them work very, very hard, paid for everybody's college, out of pocket. So as I started to get older and seeing how hard that is to take care of five kids and do what they've done and be at every sporting event and like it's just it blew my mind. So I want to retire my parents. The first step of that was about probably maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. My mom quit her job as a teacher, retired, and she now sells all my real estate on the flipping side and runs my Airbnb company. So she went from making maybe like 70, $75,000, maybe 80 as a teacher. She'll probably make 250 grand this year doing that, and probably in half the time she gets to sleep in, do all that stuff. So I've accomplished probably half of that goal, which is retire them. I always throw that in quotes because I retired from that job, but she's still
Right.
working, So retire them eventually. And then I just got married about 4 months ago,
Congratulations.
and thank you. My wife is recently pregnant as well, so bringing
Congratulations.
yeah, bringing a family into the world and a kid into the world, it's just going to change everything as well. So I know you got the dad stuff
Yeah.
behind you, so I know you have kids, so it's just taking things as they come and taking care of my family.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it, and yeah, it does change everything. Mostly for
Yeah,
the better. Mostly for the
yeah,
better. The yeah, taking care of five kids. I mean, I have two, and I'm like, that's a lot of kids. But
it's a
yeah,
lot.
it's kudos to your parents at doing a great job, and I love the idea of like sort of bringing them retiring them from their sort of career jobs, and just bringing them into the family business and giving them a role.
Yeah,
I have kind of that same idea with my mom's, to try to just have her be a part of whatever we're doing because I like it, that kind of thing, and it gives
yeah,
her something to do, and some way to earn an income without, my mom did like garden design, landscaping type stuff, and like it's hard work when you get older, and I mean, it's hard work when you're younger
yeah.
too, but it's body can't do it forever. So it's I love the idea of that, kind of just bringing them into the business. um Next question, Tommy. Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge. Special skill, a hobby, anything that you already shared that you're gonna have a baby. So this is maybe an extra one.
Yeah, I mean, something I don't talk about a lot is I play Division One athletics. Kind of mentioned it in the beginning.
Mhm.
I don't really post about it at all because I'm a huge proponent of like what you've done in the past. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
It's like you see all those football players that you come back from high school and they're still wearing their varsity
yeah,
jacket. It's
yeah.
like it's not like that big of it. It's not that important. But I was a top 150 recruit in the nation coming out of high school as a soccer player. So something that people don't may not know.
Yeah, phenomenal. Well, I was actually going to ask you what position you play.
Left mid, left right mid.
Nice. I play soccer. I mean, I didn't play in college. I did track in college, but I have basically played my whole life. Not at, obviously
Yeah.
not at the level that you did, but I love the game. I think it's still one of my passions. Even though my knees don't love it anymore, I still get out there.
Yeah. It's the It's the best. Kind of hung them up a little bit because I mean, it's almost every time I go out and play, I get hurt. It's just like, man, it's not worth it. It's
Yeah,
like 9, 10 p.m.
yeah,
Can't get out of bed the next
yeah,
morning. It's just like, man, is it worth it? It's fun when you're out there,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it hurts
I
the
did.
next day.
I took a I don't know, six or 8 years off. Like I didn't play for a long
Wow.
time, and then not. It wasn't like a conscious decision. I had just moved, and what I like mainly what I like about it is like the camaraderie, teammates, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when I moved out to California, one of my very good friends, we used to play together in Massachusetts, and he was out here, and I was like, hey, you ever want to like play again or like kick the ball around or something like that? And he was like, actually, I know a guy who might be able to like. And it was like he made, I think he said one text. Next thing I know, we're like 3 teams. They're like, yeah, we're always looking for guys. And like, okay, so
Nice.
it was kind of like, I got hurt all the time at first because I hadn't played in so long, and it's like you think you
Sure.
can do what you did before. So, but
Oh
that's
yeah.
awesome. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Probably Instagram. Instagram is Tommy Harr 05. Very active on there. Respond to all my DMs. I like to give people good advice too. I'm not gonna be the person that kind of just gives like a thumbs up back. Like I'll send voice messages back. I'll give you very good. If you ask a good question, I'll give you a good answer in return.
Awesome, awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes. Looks like we've got a website for you too.
Awesome.
Um, Final question for you. In I always you can take this in whatever direction you want, but basically, generally, I like to ask people, what advice would you give to someone who wants to get started in real estate? And you've hit real estate kind of from a couple different angles, which is really cool and a unique perspective. So I'll leave it as a bit of an open-ended question, and kind of whatever you think is good value to the listeners from your perspective.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I learned over time was it takes a long time. So having that short term, or like the long term high goals is very important. So being a high income earner or whatever you want to be in the future, it has to start somewhere. So if you don't come from much like me, where I had almost zero money, you got to figure out how to make it snowball. So real estate and business, it's all a snowball. You got to start small. And unless you want to go partner with somebody or throw money into syndication, but I'm talking more like building your own thing,
Mhm.
you have to have realistic goals of what the beginning is going to be like. So the beginning is going to be hard. You're going to quote unquote eat shit for a little while. You're gonna have nights where you question if this is the right path, if it's gonna work or if it's not. But if you have a good education and you trust and believe in yourself, it's gonna work long term. It's just probably gonna take a lot longer than you thought it was going to in the beginning. So once it does start going, the snowball is real. So getting with making a little money comes more confidence. More confidence comes more deals, and you start moving a little differently. But in that beginning part, it's really hard. So getting around people that are a good support system. My family was pretty good. They told me not to do it in the beginning, but over time they their ears perked up a little more. But find a group around your town or on the internet that you can vibe with, and get around them, learn with them, grow with them, and watch your life change.
Yeah, I love it. I think yeah, it is. It's hard in the beginning. That's it. It's just it takes a long time, and I think that goes for kind of any, whether it's real estate or business or whatever. Like that beginning is you got to expect it to not be good. Like you kind of have to really think
Yeah.
like this is not going to be easy in the beginning, and I have to weather that storm. And I'm sure I'm going to butcher this quote, but there's that quote about, you severely overestimate what you can accomplish in a year, but you underestimate what you can accomplish in 5, or something like, something to that
Yep.
effect. But basically, like the beginning, it's going to feel terrible and it's going to take a long time. But as you said, like once you kind of get into that snowball area where your confidence has grown and you're like, okay, now I know how to do this. I just have to figure out the next level is scaling it and kind of
Yep.
moving forward. So I think it's a
That's
great piece of advice.
that's the exact quote that I was going to say.
Yeah.
I say that a lot. It's huge. It's expectation with yourself, and expectation with what's real and what's not. We talked about it kind of a little bit earlier. Uh, Setting the expectation, especially if you're online, the expectation set with a lot of social media influencers is it's easy, and you gotta know that it's not. So the expectation you set for yourself is very, very important.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's fantastic advice. And you said, did you say at the beginning you're doing some coaching?
Yes.
Okay. And is that, just so people know if they want to reach out to you for that, is that like
Yeah.
website or Instagram or something? Is there just so you can
Yeah.
promote?
So it's in my Instagram bio.
Okay.
It's always changing. We're giving away free stuff. So like I was giving away my free wholesaling training for free, like 40 modules. So depends on the week what you're going to get. But we have it's the real side of real estate community. So to kind of unpack what it is. So first and foremost is the real side of real estate. We talked about a lot of things that aren't commonly shared today. About it being hard, about actual house stuff, because most people, they just share theory, and it's very like here take the money and not deliver. So it's a community. So you get education, you get live calls every week, you get accountability, but you also get a private basically Discord Slack channel of like 30 different channels of industry experts in every single one. So if you have a contracting question, my buddy who's done 2,000 rehabs sits in that channel. And if you have a general contracting question, he's there to answer it. Title, I have one of the best title companies in the country in there that can answer your title questions. So being able to get real-time education, support, and like we're having a free meetup tomorrow for our community members in Columbus, if they want to fly in, to be able to have a few drinks, get to know each other, connect with each other, and really build something that's bigger than just like a quote unquote mentorship or coaching. So that's what we got going on in the Real Side community.
No, that's fantastic. I'm glad that we made sure people were aware of that. I think that sounds like a great opportunity. Well, awesome. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today, sharing your story. I think listeners are going to get a ton of value out of this, and I hope they will check out your community. I'm going to. I think it sounds great.
Yeah, no, it's greatly appreciated. And then I'll make a discount code for anybody that's watching this as well. I'll take 20% off for anybody that comes from this podcast. I'll share whatever I make it, and we'll make it like Know Your Why, 20% off. And if they put that code in, we'll give 20% off.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's very generous.
Absolutely.
Folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Tommy's really shared a lot of great value with us. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like him. And thank you all for listening.
Appreciate your time.
I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?